Let's talk a little bit about Purim, and one of the customs. Actually, one of the traditions that we have is wearing customs on Purim and dressing up, and so on and so forth. Becomes in recent years, as years go by, more and more out of hand. So if you look at Sifrei Chazal, the Geonim and the Rishonim, there is no mention whatsoever for dressing up in Purim. Nothing, zilch, nada. And we don't really know when exactly that this tradition had developed, but the first information that we have about dressing up in Purim comes from somewhere around the 13th century. It seems like, and it's quite evident, that dressing up at Purim had evolved and developed into what it is today from what they did at the time. And at the time, they would dress up. For them to dress up was to dress up like a goy. Jews had special clothing for various reasons, and it's not always to what we think it is. Most of the time, it's what the goyim forced us to do. It's not because we were so holy. So in Purim, they used to dress up like a goyim. Rav Klonimus, the son of Rav Klonimus, that lived between the years of 1286 to 1328, which may be one of the greatest, if not the greatest translators of the time. The guy spoke numerous languages. He spoke Arabic, Latin, it was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. He spoke what is so known, and I have no idea exactly, even if I'm pronouncing it right. It's called Lashon Gypti. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe some Egyptian. I don't know what it is. He spoke Greek and many things, and he wrote a special sefer. It's called Even HaBochan, which is a whole book about Musar and stuff like this. And he also, what's interesting, he also wrote a parody, which he called it Masechet Purim, the tractate of Purim. Okay, like Masechet Bava Kama or whatever it is, Masechet Purim. And in Masechet Purim, he tells a story that the Jews used to wear goyish clothes during Purim. And in his book, he describes the joy of Purim, and he writes, and I'm quoting, Ki shtag'u v'chi holelu. They used to they had crazy berserks, and they used to drink, and so on and so forth. Ze yilbash simlat isha ulegur gerotav anakim. One would dress up like a woman, and he would have like necklaces on his neck. V'ze yitchakeh b'seudat Purim, and this one would do all kind of stuff, and during the Seudah. And it says, like, during the meal, he would act crazy like one of the hoodlums. Elu im elu, anashim im nashim, a mixture of men and women. And it doesn't seem like something so kosher, but at least that's what people used to do. And balayla al yomru mayim mayim, and at that night they should not say water, ashotei yain chai, and therefore it says, or kasalma ote, v'asher achar hamayim note, ki mitkarot cherev bote. These are very poetic words that he's using and glorifying the drinking of wine and getting trashed on Purim, what people used to do at the time. And many people were quite against that. And many other try to find reasons for that. And today, Rabotai, what I'm going to tell you is, maybe you're not going to like it, but drink cold water and move on with your life. But you gotta hear what you gotta hear. You'll see that many times we do things, we don't know what it is, and then we try to find quote unquote kosher excuses for what we're doing. So then we say according to Kabbalah, blah 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 blah. But the bottom line is that it started for something very non-kosher. As I said, whether you like it or not. And the reason why they say, for example, is to be Mekayim, to wear, not to be able to distinguish between Haman and Mordechai, ad de lo yada, is to dress up, like to confuse the people, to wear masks and so on and so forth. Some other people rely on the minhag or what Chachamim say on the pasuk, Va'anochi astir panai bayom ha'u, I should hide my face from you that day, which is in the Dvarim we say in English? Deuteronomy, do the right thing, Deuteronomy 31 verse 18, and it's therefore it's the remez, it's a hint for Esther from the Torah, and the Gemara in Chulim brings that. The Maharil, which is really the main source for Ashkenazi minhaging, said the following: "En le'agid halachai labachurim beta'anit Esther." You cannot say halacha for the bachurim, for the unmarried lads in Ta'anit Esther, and v'smach ladavar en Esther magedet. And that's relate to the concept. Esther doesn't say then magedet that she doesn't reveal her identity and where she's coming from. So therefore, we don't say halachot for that. And of course, this is only with Ta'anit Esther. Was actually, unfortunately, not so many people keep Ta'anit Esther today. So one of the things that slowly people find excuses why not to, and this is a fast like any other fast that a person has to keep. Now, after 100 years or so, Rav Yehuda Minsk that died around 1508, dealt with this issue from a halachic point of view. So you see how we evolved from a minhag that came out of nowhere, and then we start to look for some excuses for where it's coming from, and now all of a sudden we have to deal with it from a halachic point of view. And Rav Yehuda Minsk, who was one of the greatest rabbis of Italy and was the rabbi of Padua for about 47 years, was probably the first one to deal with that in a matter of isur veheter, in terms of halachic aspect of the topic. And it says that the Jews used to wear different masks, and they changed the clothes. Men wear women clothing, and women wear man clothing, even though that there is isur midoraita on that v'lo yilbash gever levush isha. That later on, we'll see, will create quite a halachic problem for what certain rabbis say and how we deal with this, because people doing it, and apparently they're not really listening to what the rabbis are saying. So we're trying to kind of twist ourselves and find ourselves a way out of that. And he writes that you shouldn't be asked that. Why? Because he saw some great and people and some very good people that they do so. And he says that some of the rabbis that he grew up with, he saw doing something like this, and he saw their sons and their daughters, their son-in-laws and their daughter-in-laws wearing those faces, and they changing their clothes from men clothes to women clothes and vice versa. And he says if chas v'shalom was nidud avera, if God forbid there was even a hint of an avera in the matter, chas v'shalom lehem lishtok v'lo imchu. God forbid that they would sit silent and they won't say a word. V'kol sheken v'kal v'chomer be'isur, in an isur like this, an isur midoraita, ela vaday haya lehem raya v'smach, for sure they had a clear out evidence and proof, and it was heter gamur for them to do so. Ve'en belevush zeh hirur avera. When men wears a woman clothing in Purim, not transgenders in Purim, and the other way around, there's no avera in the inyan. It's pure. However, you should know there was a battle in the city that he lived in after he died, and most of the graves were destroyed, and most of the manuscript were destroyed, and some of his answers that were left were published in Tshuvot Maharam in Padua in the year 1553, and that's most likely the last tshuva that he had, and he dealt with the issue of Purim. So, I don't know. According to that, the Ramah, and that's a little bit of, writes the following. The Ramah died in 1573. He was a young guy. He was born in 1520, so he's a very young guy. He writes, that the people were wearing masks on their faces in Purim and changing their clothing. אין איסור בדבר מאחר שאין מכבדים אלא לשמחה בעלמא. Since they only do so for joy, therefore there's no isur in that. Okay, they're not doing to attract other men, homosexuals and so on and so forth, transgenders. They're doing it for the joy of the simcha. So therefore, there's no isur in the davar. So he kind of takes it out of the category of isur midoraita and says it's okay in terms of that. You want to look further? You can look at Orach Chaim Siman Tef Resh Tzadik Vav. So let me give you a little bit of a background. Let's go back in time. Jews were not allowed to settle in certain parts of the world as freely as they do today. And at the time, Venice was the center of the trade world. They went to China, of course the stories about Marco Polo and this whole entire thing. It was a hub of international trading. The Jews were not allowed to settle down in Venice until around 1353. They weren't allowed to settle on permanent basis, and even after that, they were forced. Now, look how things linger. They were forced to wear special clothing, or to wear a yellow badge, or to wear yellow hats, and later on it was turned to red hats. And they suffer, even though they were allowed to settle then, they suffer from tremendous discrimination. I mean, listen, I don't care what anybody says, but we have a big cheshbon with the goyim. And it's not something you can wipe it out because, you see, 1385 they were settled down there. In 1385, so from 1385 to 1939, the Goyim still did not forget how to discriminate against Jews by putting things on them. Okay? So, how to settle down completely in the city was only around in 1516. And that's when the ghetto, the first Jewish ghetto in the world was initiated, was in Venice, 1516. They gathered the Jews together in the ghetto. In the ghetto, oh. You know who sings that? Elvis Presley. You guys know who Elvis Presley is? You don't know? Okay. Now you should know that a part of the culture of the old world, and to certain parts today also, is to abuse Jews in public was a part of the culture. To haze Jews was a part of the culture. And it wasn't just the suffering of the Jews was not only confined to confining the Jews in the ghetto, and they were allowed to go only during the day. You couldn't leave the ghetto at night. At night you have to be inside. In Rome, where they had a carnival similar to the carnival of Venice, they always started those celebrations by parading the Jews in town. And they used to, again, yellow hats, yellow badges, while the whole crowd, the Goyish crowd, was laughing and cheering on while they parading the monkeys, in other words, parading the Jews. And at the end of this wonderful carnival, they used to strip down the Jews naked, and they forced them to run naked in the streets. Okay? Zechor et asher asa lecha Amalek. As far as I'm concerned. Now, Rabotai, I know I sound like a broken record. I don't really care. Now, you understand why I'm so encouraging and pushing and annoying you by telling you to dress up like a Jew, and that includes putting a kippah on your head, to dress up in a certain way that anybody would see you as a Jew. You see, he's wearing a white shirt, black pants. Everybody knows this guy is a Jew, even if he takes his kippah off. To wear your tzitzit out, even though I'm saying to you, Sfaradim wear the tzitzit in, but you're a Jew, you got to wear it out. How about growing a beard? You understand now why I tell you to grow a beard? That's why. Leave Kabbalah, leave this. I want to grow a beard because that's how Jews look like. I want to grow a beard because that's what Jews do. I want to grow a beard because Jews were not allowed to. They were forced to shave beards to look like a Roman. I'm not a eunuch. I got beard. That's why. Yankee caps is very nice. There's nothing Jewish about it. A kippah is a Jewish thing. I don't care what kind of kippah you wear. You can wear this kind of kippah, that kind of kippah, this kind of kippah. As long as you wear a kippah that will be noticeable and fulfill the halachic requirements. That's very important. You know why? Because when I read those things and I learn about these things, it really makes me angry. And I'm going to show the goyim that I'm still here around, to the grace of God, of course. And I'm not running away from it. And this anti-Semitic venom also was bubbling in the more significant carnival in Venice. And there was an author, his name is James H. Johnson, in his book, The Venice Incognito, it says that the Jews were placed with very weird masks on the face, very ugly masks with gross noses and extreme long and weird noses. And they were part of the comedies in which the participants of the carnival took place. They were part of the images that used to make fun of the plays that they had over there, and not for nothing what Shakespeare calls it. What's his name? Shylock, whatever his name is.
Shylock.
Yeah, right. When he wrote the Merchant of Venice, is specifically associated with that. It was quite of a good description of what was going on in Venice at the same time. And that was quite petrifying to live in Venice during this time of the carnival. Can you imagine yourself now through such humiliation? And I'm going to tell you this. That's where the Nazis got it all from. That's why this should not be ever forgotten. I don't care how many generations passed on, what the Nazis have done to us. Because the Nazis, what they had done to us is the total sum of everything that was going on in Europe at the time, throughout the history. I don't want to forget this. I don't want my kids to forget this. I'm not going to forget this. If you're going to ask me if I'm ever going to buy a German car, no, I'm not going to spend my money on it. I don't care if it lasts for 50 years. I'm not going to buy a German car. You tell me I'm crazy, radical, I don't care what you call me. I don't care. I'm a Jew and I'm proud of it. I don't care what titles you put on me. You're not going to put me down. You're not going to quiet me. Not going to forget. And that's a part of Purim. So besides it, even in the Middle Ages, the Jews of Venice already completely influenced from this carnival. By the way, that parade that they have, this carnival that they had, I think it happened, if I'm not mistaken, about like 2 weeks ago. Around, I think, the 13th of February, that's around when it takes. You see, it's very similar to the time where Purim is, more or less. So they were very influenced by that, and they already included wearing masks on Purim as a part of their tradition, where the comers of the shuls of the time dressed up as people from the Megillah, right? By using the local masks, or what they call the commedia dell'arte, right? They could magnify the story of the victory of Mordechai and Esther, and especially hanging Haman and his kids, and that was in a way of the Jews to kind of get back at the anti-Semitics for all the fun that they did. So, but they were celebrating shul. It's like, okay, there were the geeks who were coming back to shul, like, hey, look what we're doing. But that's probably where he came from. And by doing so, showing that they lost and we won, regardless of what you do to us. You should know that from there it spread out. Dressing up in Purim, it spread up because of the influence that they had, especially Venice, and it makes a lot of historical sense. It's basically spread up to all the Jewish communities, with the masks and with gargoyles and all these and dancing and so on and so forth. According to Hasidim, the Hasidic explanation, Hasidus, right, Rebs? Wherein Purim explains that they could change us from inside. That's what the Sfat Emet brings. And it's similar to what the Sefer HaChinuch brings, that after apulot nimshachot alevavot, that after your actions, your heart desires. So if you doing something to change your face, or maybe eventually you'll change also internally, and so on and so forth. It will be quite difficult to explain, according to this, the chinuch. It will be very difficult to explain the act of getting drunk and smashed on Purim. So if you go with this, so either you put a mask like Mordechai, but you should not get drunk by all means. But if you look at the Tanakh and so on and so forth, it doesn't really like wearing masks. And throughout history, since the Ten Commandments of Elohim Masecha Lo Ta'aseh Lecha, gods of a mask, you should not do it to yourself. You see, we don't really like wearing those masks. Chet HaEgel is also mentioned as a act of wearing a mask, and it says, "Chatatem leHashem Elohechem v'asitem lachem egel masecha." So it's always associated with Avodah Zarah, and the pasuk in Yeshaya, it says, "Ki katzar hamatzah mi'ishtareah." In other words, the bed is too short for us to sleep in. V'hamasecha tzara ki itkanes. It seems that masecha in the Tanakh is really similar to what we're doing here. It's really to cover. It's something that you need to go back or to get into and to revive. And that's what happens in many old cultures. They put a mask on, they're kind of reviving an image of a demon or some kind of a magical or occultish, force. So they're wearing those masks, and they do so. And you see it in many cultures that are pagan or associated with the occult. Wearing a mask is always a big thing. By Jews, we always have clear faces. The Kohen does not wear a mask. And until today, they wear, whether it's voodoos or candomblé in Brazil or in Africa, or they wear masks. They put masks on themselves. They're wearing masks in the Native American, culture, especially in the East, was always an issue of, here in the woodlands, associated with demons and forces. In the South, when you're talking about it's very known to the Apaches and some other desert dwellers, wearing a mask was also part of a religious, magical, rituals that they would do. It's something that for us, we need to wonder why exactly we're doing so. It's also, of course, dealing with in length in Yeshaya, later on in terms of what the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to make us a meal and fast and so on and so forth. And it says the following. It's very, very nice. It says, "V'asa Hashem tzevakot lechol ha'amim," and Hashem will do to all the nations. Bahar hazeh, in other words, in that mountain, guys, Yerushalayim, the Har, the Temple Mount. Mishteh shmanim, mishteh shemarim. In other words, they're going to have a feast of old wine. Ubilah. There was going to be a pot in that mountain. Pnei halot. Halot means kisui, cover. Halot al kol ha'amim v'hamasecha nesucha al kol hagoyim. And we say, Bila hamavet lanetzach u'macha Hashem dima al me'al kol panim. It's in Yeshaya, Isaiah 25, verses 6 to 8. In other words, at the end of time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by revealing himself to such a thing, would remove the masks from all the nations and in which they hide on. Of course, it tells us a tremendous thing that we also ourselves wear a mask. We don't really show who we are, and mainly because we are very weak and scared. So we have to play a role. We have to play a game, and we're playing images and so on, role playing and so on and so forth. In other words, if we go for a Kabbalistic point of view, in order to reveal the true light that would shine from you inside, you need to remove the outer shells that separates between you and God. The image, the eye, the false idea that you have to do anything else besides serving Hashem. I don't care how many kids you have and how many yeshivas you have to send them. It's just an excuse for you to separate you from Hashem. Right, Rebs? Ultimately, whatever you do to break away from that is excuses that you do to break away from Hashem and His Torah. So you got to take it into account. And that's why you have to say, you have to come to a knowledge of who you are and what your role is in life. And your role is not to become a millionaire. Your role is not to do this or to buy a house with 5 bedrooms. And I'm going to tell you something. Next time you guys are going to tell me something about buying a house and eat a house, I'm going to send you some pictures from Navajo reservations in Arizona. You see how these people live, and they're going to tell me what they live. It's all a mask that you're putting on yourself. It's a charade. It's a masquerade that you parade yourself in and you humiliate yourself too, but not celebrating yourself as a Jew, as a slave to Hashem. I'm going to tell you that. Now, so since it's quite possible to realize that the tradition to dress up in Purim was influenced from the nations, the Christian nations in Europe, that they made a carnival in the beginning of the 12th and 13th century, one needs to ask, what happens to a Sephardi? Why should a Sephardi do that? And you're right, the minhag to dress up in Purim was not Sephardi at all. It was introduced more by the Zionist and secularism into Sephardism in Europe as well, wherever we were, but it was not a Sephardic tradition. Sephardim, and I'm saying not that the Italians are not Sephardim, the Italians have their own minhag, by the way. I'm talking about Sephardim in Turkey, a place like this, the minhag is quite late in history. Quite late in history. And that's, by the way, the Svara of Rav Mazuz said the same thing. And what we rely on, the Eliyah Rabbah, that brings in Siman Tafresh Tzadik Vav, to the Zecher or Mordechai that came out in Levush Malchut, right, and so on and so forth. It's a bit of a question. Why? Because the enemy can smach rak libosh bigdei Purim, so therefore you have to wear Levush Malchut. So therefore in Purim you should not dress up like a Baba from India. You should dress up bigdei Malchut. You should dress up your fineries. What you wear on Shabbat and Yom Tov, a suit and a hat. And by the way, there's no reason why you should guys know why I wear a hat on Shabbat. It's about time you grew up already. Get yourself a nice suit and wear yourself a hat. It does not have to be a black hat. It could be a gray hat. But you have to start looking like mechuba Jews on Shabbat. You want respect, but you don't respect yourself. You don't respect who you are. So why are you demanding that? So if you Mordechai wear bigdei Malchut, so therefore we should wear bigdei Malchut as well, right? And you should know there's some Hasidim in Purim that don't dress up like Mishugayim. They put their strimals and they put their fineries, and many people do it as well. They wear the best clothes on Purim, and it says what Mordechai was dressing up. And the second smach is Zecher Levashti. So the other thing is not for Mordechai, it's for Vashti. Why? Because Vashti put a tail on it. The Malach Gabriel, according to the Medrash, came and he gave her a tail. So, okay, that's why we have to dress up. But you see that this is only trying to find excuses for a minhag they're rooted in, and it's not really something that is a source in the Gemara, and so on and so forth. Rav David Yosef in Sefer Torah HaMoadim, which we have here, Halachot Purim, brings that according to Sansan LeYair, which is a book of the Chidah, he brings to reject this practice altogether with 2 hands. In other words, for Sfaradim especially, there's no need to dress up. Why? Because of kama michsholim ve'isurim ba'im al minhag zeh, because of many stumbling blocks that you come, and that's especially comes to dressing up as a man. That a man dresses up as a woman and vice versa. That's the problem, especially nowadays. In Israel, in the 30s, they had the tradition of the carnival. They had a parade with floats and stuff like this. It's called ad lo yada, mishum ad lo yada. And they would dress up like this, men dress up like women, and that became a big thing. And you know what? In Tel Aviv, it's the first time they had a gay parade in Israel. Everybody dressed up, what. You see, this is not such a healthy thing to do. And he says, if you already want to dress up, over there he writes, you should dress up according to Ruach Torah. In other words, dress up like Rav Ovadia, or dress up like Avraham Avinu, or dress up like Sarah or Esther. I remember when I was a kid, every girl wanted to be Esther Amalka, right? They look like little princesses. They wear the big puffy dresses like this. They had a staff in the hands, a crown. Every girl wanted to be Esther Amalka. The guys want to be like Mordechai with a beard. I want to be like an Indian or a cowboy. I don't know, what can I tell you? It's crazy, I always was. Oh, Chinaman. I don't know why. I want to be Chinese. That was my thing. Chinese, Indian, and cowboy. My favorite was an Indian. I always want to be an Indian. Cowboy too, got guns. So I was an Indian with a gun. I had a double cap gun like this. But, if you're already doing that, so do it at least something like Jewish. But according to many people, as you can see, this is really just excuses, and the real source for that is most likely comes from the Goyim in Europe when they make a carnival, and until today, the carnival in Europe, in Brazil happens around this time, and so on. All these parades are not so kosher to begin with. So, and it looks like that we want to imitate it. Now, with all that, you have to be very careful not to dress up like a goy that is shakua and chamishim sha'aret umah, but we're dressing up like a woman. There's no excuse for you to dress up like a woman, with all due respect to, and so on and so forth. And this is even though it's done for Simchat Purim, it seems like that in many places that becomes a big thing, and we forget the other mitzvot of the Yom. We forget about, people are neglecting about this. All they know about is dress up like women for men and to get smashed like an Irishman. However, how about mitzvot Purim? How about mishloach manot? How about matanot la'evyonim? How about all the other mitzvot that we need to do in Purim? That seems to take like a side role to this big thing that Bichlal is not Jewish to begin with. And that's what the Rambam writes, and so on and so forth. The mitzvah of matalot ha'evyonim, and he writes mitzvah la'arbota v'chol ha'musif mosifim lo. It's not only good to give this, give more, and whatever you give, you get more yourself. It's an opportunity for you to get by giving. So don't be stingy. Say, okay, how much is it? $2.25. Okay, here $2.25. Please give me change also. Take matalot ha'evyonim, take. The Rambam says this is great. The Rambam does not talk about dressing up and becoming a shikker. I mean, it really is beautiful to see, right? A nice yeshiva bachur dressing up like a woman, rolling on his vomit in the street. It's terrible. I mean, it's horrific. There has to be an end to that. So, chas v'shalom is going to be a problem. And instead of spending a lot of money, and in Israel also, Israelis are mishugaim on that. Here in America also, they spend hundreds of dollars on tachposet Purim. They spend so much, mind effort. What should my kid dress up on Purim, and money and effort? And instead of spending the money and effort like this, give the money for Talmud Torah, give the money for tzedakah, right? And give machatzit shekel as it was, right? Which machatzit shekel, if we said, is about 9 grams, or just about 9 grams, 9.6 grams according to some opinion. So give the amount. Don't say, okay, I'll give half a shekel like they give in Israel. I'll give half a dollar. So give the machatzit shekel and tosif gam kenod mayesh. We're missing it out, and that's an example that we're going to give to our kids, right? And the same thing is in Hanukkah. People give they buy their kids gifts for Hanukkah, right? But they won't buy oil. They'll buy candles instead of buying Shemen Zayit. It's a whole attitude that goes around here, and that we have to be very, very careful with that. And the Chacham Tzvi talks about lighting Hanukkah candles with oil, not with wax, to do with the right thing and doing the right thing. And he brings something which is very interesting about the Gemara in Zvachim, Daf Pei Chet Amud Bet, En Aniyut Bimkom Ashirut. And that's a very important verse for us to learn. En Aniyut, there's no being poor in places of richness. What does it mean? If you're going to tell me, aniyut, it's money, that's not what we're talking about. If you are rich and fulfilled with values, with Torah, with concepts of osher ruchani, you're never going to feel poor. But if you are empty spiritually, you're always going to be poor. So being poor or being money or having money is not depending how much money is in your bank. It means how much money is in your safe deposit in your heart, in your neshama. Whether you have money or don't have money doesn't make a difference. And aniyut b'mkom hashirut. So if you are rich and fulfilled spiritually, you are rich also practically. So you think about this, guys. Please spread the words. Purim Sameach. Do not drink. Do a lot of mitzvot, but don't get. Drink, but don't get drunk. Have a great day.